Hey guys, I'm Kimberly from Fat Quarter Shop, and today we have an awesome video. It's part of our shortcut series, and it's called Charm Pack Crispies. And it's super easy. If you can make a half square triangle, you can make this. And it's a free pattern to download at Fat Quarter Shop. The version I'm showing you today is a lap version, but we also have free versions for crib, twin, and queen, so you can check those out. For our lap version, you need 2 print charm packs and 2 solid charm packs. We're using Buttercup and Slate by Corey Yoder, and we're using color 200 for the Bella Solids. This is how the pattern looks when you download it, and it's gonna be really awesome what we do, because if you can make 4 half square triangles, sew them together, you're gonna quickly turn that into this. Let's get started and let me show you an awesome way to turn half square triangles into this awesome Charm Pack Crispies block. So what you're gonna do is start with 1 solid and 1 print charm pack. Super easy. Now on this pattern, you cannot starch, because if you starch, there won't be enough room to trim down. So what I'm gonna do is put those together. I'm gonna draw a line 1/4 inch away from the center. So to do that, I've lined up my 1/4 inch at the top and the bottom and just draw that line. You can also draw a center line if you would like. From there, you can just draw a line 1/2 inch away. So you're basically 1/4 inch away from the center on both sides. Now here, I would go ahead and use 2 pins opposite of the lines. And from here, what I would do is go to the sewing machine, and I am gonna be using Aurifil Color 2000 and just stitch directly on those lines. When you get back, it's gonna look like this. So I'm gonna just cut in the center, corner to corner. And that, each of those pair of squares is going to give you 2 half square triangles. And you're gonna wanna follow the instructions for how many to make. Since we have 4 different size options, there's a different amount on each. But if you're making the lap size, you're gonna make 144. Now let me show you how to iron these for the next step. So now what I'm going to do is set my seam. And when you set your seam, that friction pin that I use is going to disappear. And I'm gonna press to one side, it doesn't matter which side. Once you have pressed to one side, then go ahead and press open. And if you let the clapper sit on that for about 30 seconds, your block will get nice and flat. And having it nice and flat with no wrinkles is gonna give you the best results in the next steps. So from here, once everything is nice and flat, you're going to trim all of your half square triangles to 4.5. And so what I'm gonna do is just use a Creative Grids 4.5 inch ruler, put that diagonal line right on that seam. I'm gonna cut 2 sides, rotate, and this is why you can't starch, because you wouldn't have enough excess fabric to trim down. And so just repeat that step on all of your half square triangles, and we'll move to making the block. Now you're gonna build your block, and what you're gonna do is have 2 matching half square triangles with the whites in the center, 2 matching half square triangles with the darks in the center. And to make this work really nicely, what you will do is pin at both intersections. So I'll pin down here, and then at the top, if you just put your finger right here and then flip this up, make sure everything's in the same spot, and pin, and you're gonna do that, you're gonna stitch down a 1/4 inch seam, and then you will have 2 units that look like this. And from here, you're gonna also pin. From here, you'll take this, get the whites lined up, pin here. So this block really does matter if you pin, especially because you have all these seams. So you're gonna pin all of this, and then you're gonna get this block, and we're gonna cut this block up, and we're gonna have a lot of fun, and you're gonna see what fun this turns into. So from here, you're gonna pay attention to this diagram really closely. We're gonna be cutting 2 3/4 this way, then 3 inches, and that's gonna leave you with 2 3/4. We're gonna do the other side, 2 3/4, 3, and 2 3/4. And you will see that using a rotating mat is going to be really helpful. So I'm going to use a Creative Grids ruler and just mark 2 3/4 away, trim. And then you can either cut at 3 inches, or what I'm going to do is just rotate and cut at 2 3/4 so that I only have to look at one measurement on this. So there's the 2 3/4, and this will give you 3 inches. Then I'm going to rotate the other direction, cut at 2 3/4, and that's why a rotating mat is really helpful, because if this comes kind of apart, it kind of gets tricky. And then I'm going to start with the yellows in this corner. And if you look at the diagrams, the corner pieces are your number 1 pieces, the center is number 3, and then the remaining pieces are your number 2s. So now what you're going to do is you're going to leave your number 1s just like they are, and then you're going to leave your number 3 just like it is. On your number 2s, you're going to rotate. You're going to flip it 1 time, and that's going to create the star in the center. So you rotate it 180 degrees. And then what you're going to do is just pin, stitch a 1/4 inch seam, press according to your pattern, which is going to be press open, add your last row, press open, and then add these together. And right here, just make sure you're pinning in these intersections. And when you're done sewing these together, you're going to have a beautiful block that forms this really cool star. So when you look at the layout, you're going to get a really nice twinkling star effect, and you can see how the block looks before it's quilted. And what's really cool is you didn't have to piece these really small seams because we just cut, and it's a really cool effect. I know you have tons of turn packs laying around, so I'm interested to see if you're going to try this quilt out. I hope you love it. It's something super original to Fat Quarter Shop, and it's a completely free pattern for you. So I hope to see you making the Charm Pack Crispy soon. See you next time. Hey guys, I'm Kimberly from Fat Quarter Shop, and on today's Classic and Vintage, we're going to be working on a block that I've been wanting to bring to this channel for a really long time. The reason I want to bring it is it uses a combination of half square triangles and 9 patches, and it's very easy to do. Today we're going to be sewing with the Threads That Bind fabric by Blackbird Designs, and when we make this, we are going to be using Aurifil 2312 because it blends really nice with the background. We're going to be using the Creative Grids 2.5 by 18.5 inch ruler to make our strip sets. And of course, for our half square triangles, we're going to be using triangle papers. The Geese in the Pond is a free pattern available at Fat Quarter Shop, and today we're going to be making one block. We do have some low price patterns available if you want to use it in a quilt and have a quilt setting. This block uses 12 half square triangles. So each square of paper makes 2 half square triangles. So since we're making 12, we need 6 squares of paper. And on your pattern, it does tell you the SKU number you need, and we're using H300, which gives us 3-inch finished half square triangles. So when you're cutting your triangle paper, just make sure you cut directly on that line. You're going to layer your fabric A and fabric C rectangles right sides together and make sure there's no wrinkles in your fabric. And then you want your paper to lie nice and flat with no bubbles. If you pin it and you have a little hump in there, you're going to get half square triangles that are the wrong size. So I like to pin a couple of times, and you want to make sure your pins are not next to your stitched lines. Once you have it pinned, you're going to take your stitch length and lower it by 2 stitches from what you normally stitch. So if you normally stitch at a 2.0, just stitch it like a 1.8. You're going to stitch on the dotted lines, and the closer you stitch to the dotted line, the better results you're going to get with your paper. This is how the paper looks when you stitch directly on that line, and remember today we're using Aurifil 2312. So now we're going to cut on all the solid lines around your triangle paper. I prefer to cut the outside first and then cut the inside. Just like when you stitched on the line, the closer you cut on the line, the better results you're going to get. I'm gonna actually cut this in half and then singly cut each, just to get a better result. And then I'm going to cut inside here, and these don't have to be as accurate because these are going to be hidden in the seam. And then what I like to do is pull my paper back, put it on the crease, and just pull your paper off. And you're going to do that on all 12, and then I'm going to show you how to iron. We're going to end up pressing these half square triangles open. The way I like to press those is to set my seam, press to one side, and let that sit for just a second. Then I cut my little dog ears off, and then I'm going to press this open. And then from here, I'm gonna set a tailor's clapper on top, and it's going to absorb the heat, and when we come back, all 12 are gonna be nice and flat. Now that we've made our half square triangles, we're gonna move on to our 9 patches. To make our first part, you're gonna assemble a fabric E rectangle to a fabric B rectangle. You're gonna use a 1/4 inch seam, and then you're gonna press this one towards the green, and you're gonna make one of these strip sets. Now from this background strip set, we're gonna subcut this into 8 1.5 inch rectangles. So the first thing I like to do is line my ruler on the seam and cut a nice clean cut. And then we're gonna cut 8 rectangles. And as you get in further to the strip, your rectangles might kind of start getting wobbly or not as straight, and if that happens, I'll show you what to do. Like from here, I'd probably stop and then recut just to make sure I've got a straight edge and keep going. You're gonna make 8 background strip sets. And then this piece you don't need, so you can set this aside. Now that we've made our background strip set, we're going to move to our print strip set. And this time you reverse the color, so your green is on the outside and your background is on the inside. And on these, you're gonna make 2 strip sets. From the first strip set, you're going to cut 4 1.5 inch rectangles, just like you did previously. So we'll do that real quick. And then this part you don't need, so you can set that aside. And then we're gonna grab a different ruler so that we can cut this into 4 3.5 inch rectangles. And this ruler's just not wide enough to do that. So for this one, I'm gonna use my 6.5 by 12.5 inch ruler by Creative Grids, and I use this ruler quite a lot. And again, to make your starting cut, just cut that, and we're gonna subcut 4 3.5 inch squares. And when you're cutting, you can actually line up the top and the left, and you'll see that's going to give you perfect 3.5 inch squares. Now we're going to turn our 1.5 inch rectangles into a 9 patch. Now what I forgot to tell you is on your print strip set, you want to press that towards the green. And if you look at the back, you will see that your seams are going to nest because the seams go different directions. When you put these together, what I like to do is they will nest, meaning the seams will lock. So if you move your green on the top to the left, it will actually lock and not move. So I am going to pin there, and then you want to pin in this next one, and all you have to do is go like this and it will lock. And then I would also pin at the beginning and the end, so that is how you're going to pin. You'll stitch with a 1/4 inch seam, add both top and bottom, and you're going to press towards the inside. And for this block, you're going to make 4 9 patches. Now we're going to combine our half square triangles and our 9 patches. And the most important thing in this step is we're trying to make little geese wings. And so you want to make sure that your half square triangles are turned the correct way. You will sew these together with a 1/4 inch seam and press according to the pattern. And when you're reading a fat quarter shot pattern, just look at the direction the arrow faces, and that's how you press. And then you'll pin these together. and sew that with a 1/4 inch seam. And this is how your corner unit looks. And if you have used triangle paper and if you've pinned along the way, you're going to have a nice square unit, and you're going to make 4. The very last unit we're going to make before we build our block is our center unit, and that one's super easy. You just take a fabric D square and one of your rail units, and just make sure you have it turned the correct direction, stitch with a 1/4 inch seam, and make 4, and again press according to the pattern. The very last step is to lay out your block, and just make sure your rail units are on the inside and that you haven't misplaced the direction of your half square triangles. You're going to pin these all together, stitch with a 1/4 inch seam. Once those are done, you'll add your last 2 seams, and ta-da! Your block is done. This is called the Geese in the Pond block, and ours finishes at 15 inches. And the free block pattern is at fatquartershop.com. In addition to the free pattern, we have a low price PDF, and on that, it's going to give you instructions on how to assemble the quilt in either a crib, a square lap, a rectangle lap, or a queen. And the beauty of this setting is that these flying geese create a secondary design to have more geese in the pond. I hope you've enjoyed our video today. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. I'm Kimberly from Fat Quarter Shop, and I have a really cute shortcut quilt for you. It's called Charm Pack Shortbread, and we're going to do a fun technique to show you how to make some 4 patches. We're going to be pressing open, so that's going to be a ton of fun. And what you need for this is very simple. Just get a charm pack that's prints, and then a charm pack that's solid, and you'll need some extra solids to go in the alternate settings. This is a completely free pattern with 4 size options, so grab 2 charm packs and we'll be ready to get started. From your charm packs, you're going to take 1 print charm square and 1 background charm square. Now, if you don't have a background charm pack, you can just cut some squares. You're going to put them right sides together, and you can pin at the top and the bottom. And then what you're going to do is go to your sewing machine and sew a 1/4 inch seam on the right and a 1/4 inch seam on the left. And that is going to look like this. You want to do a really tight stitch length. So if you normally stitch at a 2.0, you would stitch at a 1.5. And I usually stitch at a 1.5, so I'm stitching at a 1.2. And we're using Aurifil Color 2000. And the reason you want a short stitch length is we're going to be pressing open because there's so many seams. Now from here, this is going to be a really cool technique. I've got my Perfect 5 ruler, and it's exactly 5 inches, which is exactly this size, so it's great to use anytime you're working with charm packs. And on one side, you're going to cut at the 2.5 inch line, and then the other side, you're going to cut at a 2.5 inch. Now from each of these units, you're going to get 4 2 patches, and you're going to do this with 36 different pairs, and you're going to get a total of 144 2 patches. Your next step is going to be to press, and what I like to do is set my seams, and I'm just going to put the iron on this for about 5 seconds. Then I'm going to press each of them to one side. It doesn't matter which side, and then we're going to press open. I always prefer, if I'm going to be pressing open, to press to one side and then to go back and then press open. To press open, what I do is finger press the seam open and just press. And you can use a clapper by Riley Blake, and that will absorb the heat from the block and make it nice and flat. You can let that sit there until the heat is completely gone. Now what we're going to do is put the 2 patches together to make 4 patches. And to get a really accurate seam, because we've pressed open, they're not going to nest. So what you'll do is just make sure your yellow touches your yellow and your white touches your white. Put a pin here, a pin at the end, and a pin at the beginning. And I want you to keep that short stitch length. You're going to do that on both of these. and then you're going to sew with a 1/4-inch seam on this side and press open. And when you do that, it's going to look like this. It's going to look really nice on the front and the back, and on the back you can see how everything lines up. So you're going to do that on all of your pairs. Now to build the block, we're going to bring in another pair, and you're going to kind of make an X with colors. And of course you can move it around and do any kind of colorway you would like. But the reason we pressed open is there's so many seams. If you look at it on the back, there's so many seams, and so it's going to come out nice and flat by pressing open. So you'll do that same pinning technique where you pin at each intersection, stitch a 1/4-inch seam, press open again, and then you're going to pin at all the intersections, and you're going to have a block that looks just like this. And once you get to this step, you can actually press each seam opposite directions and then press one direction, and you'll see the arrows in the pattern. You could also press open if you wanted to. And you're going to make 18 of these blocks, and once you do that, we can build our quilt. To assemble your quilt, you're going to lay out your shortbread blocks with your fabric C background squares, and you're going to see that when you lay it out, you're going to get kind of an Irish chain look. And this is a great, easy quilt for beginners. To make the quilt, you're going to alternate your fabric C background squares with your 4 patches. And when you look at the quilt, it's going to be really awesome because it's a very simple quilt, but because of the way we've assembled our 4 patches, you get an Irish chain effect, which is really fun. The Charm Pack Shortbread quilt is fast, fun, and easy. If you want to try other shortcut quilts like this, we've also got the Starry Charms quilt, and that's also a completely free pattern. I would love for you to subscribe to my YouTube channel and join me every Friday for my weekly live streams. See you there. Hey guys, I'm Kimberly from Fat Quarter Shop. I'm back with another free shortcut quilt. This is called Jelly Roll Sizzle, and it uses 1 jelly roll and just a little bit of background for your little points that it's going to create. Download your free pattern at Fat Quarter Shop. This comes in 4 size options, very easy and great for beginners. So let's get started. For this quilt, you're just going to take a jelly roll, and we're going to be using 32 of the strips. So if you have leftover strips, you can use those on the back of your quilt to make a fancy backing. But what I would suggest is to take the 32 that you want to use and starch them. I use Faultless Niagara Original Hold. When you starch your fabric will shrink across this direction, and it will still stay 2.5 this direction, so you can always starch a jelly roll when you're using it. So starch your jelly roll, and let's get started. Your next step is to take your 32 strips, pair them with another strip so that you have 16 strip sets of 2. And on this one, you can just press to any side you want. You could also press open if you prefer, but the direction you press does not matter in this quilt because there's no seams that need to be met up with. What I sewed with for this quilt is the Aurifil 2000, and what I'm going to do here is we're going to trim these down. So you're starting with 16 of these, and from each strip set you're going to cut 3 rectangles that are 4.5 by 12.5. So I happen to have this awesome Creative Grids ruler that finishes at 4.5 by 12.5. So what I'm going to do is the Creative Grids ruler, the white line is the center, which matches up the center of this seam, and I'm just going to cut one side. And from there, if you rotate and you cut, you might get a tiny, tiny piece of that jelly roll that comes off. And that's just an optional step. So from each strip, we're going to cut 3 of those. And what I like to do is line up the center and just trim all 4 sides. Now, one more. Then you will will have a total of 48 4.5 by 12.5 inch strips. But I am going to give you a tip here. When you're sewing your strip sets together, if you sew with a scant 1/4 inch and you put your ruler on top, it will come out perfectly 4.5 by 12.5 because your seam allowance will just be a little bit shorter. So if you're a little bit OCD like me, then that's a great option for you. So this next step, we're going to be working with corner squares, which is super easy technique. You're going to take only 32 of these rectangles. You're going to have 32 fabric B squares. Now today I'm showing you instructions for the lap size. There are 3 other sizes that you can also make. I'm going to use a friction pin, draw a line from corner to corner. When I iron later, the ink from the pin will disappear. And from here, I'm going to place it where the line is this direction on the left side of the rectangle. When I'm doing this, I will pin twice, and the reason I do that is I don't want it to shift when I get to my sewing machine. From here, you're going to take a foot that's open so that you can see where you're stitching, and with whatever stitch length you normally use, which I usually use a 2.0, just stitch directly on that line, then remove your pins, and you will have 32 that look like this. So I would do all 32 first. Then you're going to trim a 1/4 inch away from your stitching. Then you're going to press towards your background print, and you're going to have 32 of these units before we build our block in the next step. Now you should have 32 of this unit and 16 of this, and we're going to build 16 blocks. So I'm going to take 2 from this stack and 1 from this stack, and we're going to have fun building a block. Your first unit is going to go just like we had it. Your second unit is the one without the corner square. And then this one, instead of going this direction, we're going to just flip it. And this is what is going to form your block. So you will have a corner square here and a corner square here. And what I do recommend is when you're sewing your block and you put them together, just pin on the right and on the left and stitch with a 1/4 inch seam. When you're done with that, you will add your next seam, and you will have a total of 16 blocks that are 12.5 inches square, unfinished. When you download your free pattern, the very first one is going to be the lap size, which is what we're making today. But we do have size options for crib, twin, and queen that are also free. When you're putting your blocks together in your final quilt, you're going to rotate your blocks so that every section has this little pinwheel right here, and you can just pay attention to the placement in your pattern and sew your quilt together. I would just sew them in rows and then sew your rows together and press according to the pattern. So this free Jelly Roll Sizzle quilt is a great addition to Jelly Roll Jam. So if you've made Jelly Roll Jam and you're ready to move on, this quilt is great. Today we used Americana fabric from Minnick & Simpson, but at Fat Quarter Shop we have tons of molded jelly rolls. So make sure to check us out, subscribe to this channel, and I'll see you next time. Hey guys, I'm Kimberly from Fat Quarter Shop, and on today's classic and vintage episode, we're going to really recreate an old quilt. We found an antique quilt and it had a circular motion to it, but we wanted to figure out how we could take a vintage pattern and make it fresh for today. We found that the block was called Mayflower, and we traced it back to Nancy Page in 1934, but then we also found that it was also from the 1800s. So with lots of research, this is what we've come up with. We are going to use the brand new Oregon Trail templates, and if you've never used templates before, this is a great quilt to start on because you use the templates and then you trim down. We're going to use Aurifil 2000 since it matches our background. We are going to need a pin to mark the little points in the templates, and you'll need a 4.5 inch or larger square ruler to be able to trim your units down. And we're going to be working a lot with pressing open today. So let's get started on the Mayflower quilt. The Mayflower block pattern is completely free at Fat Quarter Shop. We do have a low price pattern if you want to put it into a setting. But before we start cutting the block, I want to visually show you how the block works. The block has 4 units. The center is using template 1, and then templates 2 and 3 go on the side, and at the very end you add a corner square. So let's get started cutting our block. The Oregon Trail templates are designed by Joanna Figueroa and Miss Rosie, and they have template names on them. So we're going to start with template 1, and we're going to start with our fabric A squares. You'll place the template on your square, and you're going to cut every side. Using a rotating mat will really help because you can see that my fabric is not moving as I'm cutting. Now before you remove the template, what I like to do is mark my dots now. The dots are going to be used as points for pinning in a little bit. You're going to make 4 of these units. The next step is to take a fabric B rectangle, and on your template it will say the template number. Now we're working with template 3, and you want to make sure when you're cutting your template is right side up, and then we're going to just cut right here, rotate, and make sure we do not turn the template to the wrong side or your items will go the wrong way. And I'm just aligning the left side of the template and the bottom side here. And now you have 4 template 3s, and now I'm going to add the dots to these. I'm using a friction pen because the ink will disappear later with heat. If you want to use a pencil, you can do that. Just make sure you're using something very light so it doesn't show through on your final block. We're going to do the same thing with template 2. Make 4 units. Now you're going to stitch on your machine. The most important thing is to stitch with a lower stitch length. So stitch with like a 1.6 stitch length or 1.8, and what you'll do is press open. That's very important to press this open, and then you're going to come back, and you can see that my iron removed the lines from right here, so I'm going to add them back. Just put your template right back on. Add your dots and pin again. And I love working with templates that have the little holes in them where you can create the dots. Then I can do really well with the templates. And then sew again, press open, and your unit looks like this. The last step is on your bigger white corner, not the smaller, we're going to add a fabric D square. We're going to use a corner square method where you draw a line on the wrong side of your fabric D. And again, where there's more white, I'm going to actually pin twice. So before I stitch this line, I see that a little piece is puckering out, and I'm going to cut this back. And only on the top 2 will I do that. Now I'm going to stitch directly on that line using that same stitch length. Really nice and small because you don't want your stitches to come out. And now I'm going to give you some tips on pressing open. Now when I press open, I always set my seam for about 5 seconds. Then I like to press to one side. I usually kind of open the seam with my finger, just press right on that line. Let your iron sit about 5 seconds, and just don't move your iron a bunch or your seams will start getting messy. Now from there, once it's pressed to one side, then I like to press open. And I'm gonna probably let the iron sit about 10 seconds. Put a little steam in your unit. Then I'm going to place the clapper on top and let that sit until all of the heat has absorbed into the wood and you're going to have nice flat seams. So now we need to trim this to 3 7/8, but first I want to trim this right here to be straight. So I got a 4.5 inch Creative Grids ruler. I'm going to place that right on these two sides. I want my 1/4 inch to hit here and my 1/4 inch line on the ruler to hit here. So I'm going to trim those two, turn it around, and then I need to be at 3 7/8. 3 7/8. Make sure that hits, and 3 7/8, and then trim this off. You're going to do that for all 4 units, and then we'll put our block together. The biggest tip here is to use lots and lots of pins. So from here, put your fabrics right sides together, pin at each end, and then here, where it's pressed open, we want all of this to line up. So we want the blue and the blue and the white to touch. So you'll put a pin here, and on the back you see this little flipper right here. Cut that off because that's just going to add bulk. You're going to do the same thing here. Stitch a 1/4 inch seam. Once those are stitched, you're going to stitch this at a 1/4 inch seam, and you're going to pin here, here, and here, and you're going to have a beautiful Mayflower block. You can find the free Mayflower block pattern at fatquartershop.com, and if you want to turn it into an awesome setting that we have, there's a low price pattern for that. This setting block creates a circular motion in the quilt, and it makes it look like you have worked with circles and you haven't. And that has size options for toddler, twin, lap, and king. Make sure to subscribe to the Fat Quarter Shop YouTube channel, and I'll see you next time. I'm Kimberly from Fat Quarter Shop, and we're back with another free pattern. So download the Jelly Roll Twirl at Fat Quarter Shop, and I'm going to show you how to make the block. And the pattern actually comes with 3 sizes: throw, lap, or twin. So you can make any of those sizes. This is a very beginner-friendly quilt. Now today I'm going to be stitching or sewing with the Simply Delightful collection by Sherry and Chelsea, and you need 1 jelly roll and 5/8 yard for the throw quilt. And this 5/8 yard background is a Bella Solid color 200. So I'm going to just kind of jump right in. So download the free pattern and I'll show you how to make the quilt. So to be exact, on the throw size, we only need 33 strips. Now I have starched all of my fabric because it's easier for me to work with. So from your strips, you're gonna make some strip sets, and you're gonna make 11 of them. They're all gonna have 3 pieces to them. And what I like to do is when your fabrics come off the jelly roll, you will have some that have white on the selvage and some that are just plain on the selvage. What works best for me is if you rotate so that they're different. And what you'll do is just sew this with a 1/4 inch seam and press. And on this quilt, we pressed open, and we're gonna go ahead and press open through the whole quilt. And once you sew that together, this is what it will look like. And you'll notice we have rotated our jelly roll strip, pressed open, and as you see, one end is straight and one end is not, and that's okay. That's just kind of how jelly rolls work. And again, you're going to make 11 of these, and we'll move to the next step. We're going to take 3 of these strip sets and cut them each into 6.5 inch squares. And what that's going to do is give us 18 total 6.5 inch squares. So what I like to do on this quilt, using the Creative Grid 6.5 by 12.5 inch ruler is all you need. And what I'm going to do is line up the line on one of the seams, cut, and then we're going to cut 6 6.5 inch squares. It's already 6.5 this way. Now I'm kind of towards the center, and I don't really like messing with the center, so I'm actually going to go to the other side, cut off that selvage, rotate, and make 6 of these. And then this you'll discard. Now what you'll do here is, because you're working with jelly roll strips, it might come out a little uneven. So I like to go ahead and just trim the width also, just so that it comes out exactly 6.5. And you might notice you don't see the little jagged edges on this, and that's because we had a little filming mishap, and so we had to end up using yardage to make our step out. So just pretend we made them with jelly roll strips. And this step right here is totally optional. Most people probably wouldn't do it. I just like it to be a little bit more exact. And also jelly rolls, any pre-cut, it never comes exact. So you're going to repeat that on 2 more strip sets, and you will have a total of 18 6.5-inch squares. So we started with 11 strip sets. We cut 3 down into 6.5-inch squares. Now the remaining 8, you're going to cut 2 6.5-inch squares and 2 6.5 by 12.5-inch rectangles. So I'm going to do that same thing where I get a clean cut. So there's 6.5, 6.5, and the reason I picked this 6.5 by 12.5-inch ruler is you can just turn it this way and cut. Now I'm going to do the same thing where I trim this down so it's exactly 6.5. And your seams don't have to line up with any other seams, so you don't have to worry about if your left strip is wider than your right strip. So you could just cut on one side like I am. So you're going to repeat that, and you will have a total of 16 6.5-inch squares and 16 6.5 by 12.5-inch rectangles. So now that you've cut everything, you have 34 6.5-inch squares. We're only going to use 32, so take out 2 that you don't like and just set them aside. You're going to take your fabric B square and put it on the top right corner. You want to make sure your stripes are horizontal, not vertical. And to get the best results, if you pin 3 times, it's going to keep this in place when you're sewing and it will not shift. I like to use an open toe foot so I can see my stitching, and I'm just going to stitch right through the center, and you'll have drawn a line from corner to corner with a friction pin. Once you stitch, you're going to trim a 1/4 inch away, so you'll trim that off and press, and you're going to press open, and this is how your unit is going to look. And again, you're going to make 32. Now from your rectangles, you're going to put a fabric B on the bottom right, and again, if you pin 3 times before you stitch on this line, everything will stay in place. So stitch on the line, trim a 1/4 inch away, and your unit will look like this, and you are going to use all 16 of them. And now we're ready to assemble our block. Each block is going to use 2 squares and 1 rectangle. You're going to place the rectangle on the right with the square on the bottom right. And then your squares, you're going to have a background on the top right. And then flip the other block so the background is on the bottom left. And what I like to do here is just make sure you like the placement of the fabrics. And you're going to sew this together with a 1/4 inch seam, press open, and then add the rectangle to the right side, stitch with a 1/4 inch seam and press open. You should have a total of 16 blocks, and today I'm demoing the throw size. Now for the throw size, you're going to have 4 blocks by 4 blocks. And you'll just follow the diagram for your placement. But the way we have it placed is where you have kind of a little on-point square. So you can easily see how we have pieced that together. So you can either piece this in rows and then columns, or you could piece 4 blocks first and then place them into your quilt. And remember, it's supposed to just be scrappy. I hope you have a great time making the free fat quarter shop pattern called Jelly Roll Twirl. Make sure to subscribe to our channel and join me every Friday where I give you lots of quilting tips. I'm Kimberly from Fat Quarter Shop, and I'm back with another shortcut quilt. This one is called Layer Cake Shuffle, and it's a great follow-up to our Layer Cake Lemonade video that's part of our shortcut series. Today we're going to use the Meander collection by Anila Hoy for Moda Fabrics. And the great thing about this quilt is it uses all of the layer cake and there's no fabric waste. We're going to be working with half square triangles. We're going to be trimming down, so we are going to be using the Creative Grids 8.5-inch square ruler. And on this one, since we have a lot of dark prints, we're going to use Aurifil 2600. And this is super easy quilt, so let's get started. So like I said, you're going to use all 42 squares in your layer cake, and we have tons of layer cakes to select from at Fat Quarter Shop. What you're going to do is make 2 stacks. You're going to make 1 stack of 21 that has lights and mediums, and 1 stack of 21 that's darks. And if you have more darks or more lights, just put 21 in one stack and 21 in another. Label them A and B. And to start, I'm just going to pick 2 random fabrics. This is completely scrappy, so there's no need to even think about your colors. You're just going to pull and make it scrappy. You'll notice these are not exactly square. And the reason why is we starched these squares because you have plenty of room to starch. And when you starch, your fabric will shrink on one side and not the other, and that's going to be okay for this quilt. So I have 2 fabrics that I have put together, and I have a light and a dark, but it really honestly doesn't matter for this one. I'm going to use the Creative Grids 15-inch seam guide, and the reason why is it's going to go all the way past, and I don't even have to think. I'm just putting the very center of that and drawing a line on each side, and what that's actually doing is giving you a 1/4 inch from the center to create a half square triangle. So I am using a friction pen, and I like this pen because when I use the iron later, the ink is going to go away. So what you'll do from here is because there are some darker navy in this layer cake, I'm going to use 2600, which is the color of Aurifil thread. Whatever thread you use, I would recommend 100% cotton. Then what I'm going to do is just whatever stitch length you usually sew with on your machine, just stitch directly on these lines, and it's going to look just like this. And now we're going to take our ruler and cut right on that center line. You're going to make a total of 42 half square triangles, and then you're going to press all of your seams open, and we're going to move to the next step. So now you have 42 half square triangles, and you're going to notice they're not square, and that's okay. We're going to square those up in the next step. So now I'm going to put the 2 squares where the seams are the same direction, and I'm going to try to alternate the darks and the lights because this will look better than if we did this. It wouldn't look as good when it's done. And so you can always visually open it, but you can see right here alternating your darks and lights is going to look really nice. So what I would do here is first make sure your seams are going the same direction. Find the center and make sure your seams are lined up. And I'm going to put a pin just right in the center. I'm not putting a pin anywhere else because we're going to be trimming down, so there's really no reason to pin. So from here, what I'm going to do is draw a line just like I did with the seam guide that's 15 inches, and I'm using the 15 inch since it's long enough. I'm going to go to the sewing machine and stitch on these drawn lines. Now from here, before I cut across the center, I'm going to look and just make sure that my seams look okay. They don't have to be perfect, but I do want to make sure that I'm not off too much. Now I'm going to cut in the center, and I'm just going corner to corner, and that's about 1/4 inch away. I'm going to go iron these and come right back. So from here, I went and pressed my seams open so it's nice and flat. Now from here, you should have 42 hourglass units. And you can see it's not straight at all. But what we're gonna do here is we're gonna take the Creative Grids 8.5 inch square ruler. The Creative Grids rulers have a little circle in the center. So you'll put the circle in the center. You'll make sure these two touch and these two touch. So sometimes you have to move it around a little bit. You're just gonna cut, but you can see the corners of the ruler touch the center of the seam. So you just trim, and look at how little you are wasting on this quilt. Now here it looks a little off, so I'm just gonna kind of pull so I get that nice point. And you're gonna trim all 42 to 8.5 inch square. And what's beautiful about this is your block is the perfect size. So when you put it together, it's going to be super easy. So the Layer Cake Shuffle is a completely free pattern at Fat Quarter Shop. The first 2 pages are going to give you instructions for the lap quilt. And then there are additional size options for twin, queen, and king. So you can make this quilt any size. And the way you're going to put your rows together is just following the quilt assembly. And you're just putting together rows and columns, super easy. But I do want to give you a tip on putting 2 blocks together to get your seams to look nice. So for your seams, what you would want them to do is you want them to touch exactly. So I would pin right at that intersection after you line them up, go to the next one, line them up, pin. Then I would also put a pin in the center, and then I would sew it together. Now this is the only pinning you need to do in this quilt, but it is very important so that when they're together, your points match up, because you do have 4 points that are going to match up all at once, which is why we wanted you to press open to begin with. I can't wait to see all the Layer Cake Shuffle quilts you make in your home. Make sure to share them with us on social media. And remember, we have tons of free videos and tons of free patterns at Fat Quarter Shop. And of course, we have tons of layer cakes. And just so you can see, this quilt would be great in any layer cake. I hope you've enjoyed this shortcut quilt, and I'll see you next time. Hey guys, I'm Kimberly from Fat Quarter Shop, and on this episode of Classic and Vintage, we're going to be doing something a little bit different. This time, we're going to be making a 24-inch block, and it's called Wood Lily, and we found it in an old newspaper from 1936. So we are basing our block on this one. And it is very big, but the pieces are big. I would say it's more of an intermediate block, but you can definitely do it. It's a free block pattern. It would make a great table topper just like this, or you can buy a low price pattern to turn it into a quilt. So let's get started. Download the free Wood Lily block pattern at Fat Quarter Shop, and this block uses 6 different fabrics. You're going to have 6 prints ranging from light to dark to accent, and 1 background. And you start off really easy with 1 square, 2 rectangles, and what you're going to do is first put the J and the B together with a 1/4 inch seam and press. And in our patterns we have arrows, so just follow the arrows when you're pressing. Once that's done, you're going to add the fabric A, press, and this is going to be your unit. For each block you're going to make 4. Once you have this done, we'll take this away, and you're going to keep building. You're going to add a fabric D rectangle to this side. Just make sure you're on this corner. Sew a 1/4 inch seam and then press. and then you're gonna add a fabric C rectangle. Now, when you get to this point, it should measure 8.5 by 8.5, and you're gonna make 4. Now, once you have this, you're going to take 2 fabric K squares. On the wrong side, draw a line from corner to corner. I'm using a friction pen. That's my preferred marking method. You're gonna do that on the back of 2 of your squares. You're gonna add a fabric K to the top right and the bottom left. And when you have that place, you wanna make sure you've got white here and then this little section in the bottom right. Now, once you get here, so I'm gonna show you 2 methods. You can either pin like this to keep it in place. When you start sewing here, you're gonna use an open toe or a foot that won't pull on this fabric. You're gonna sew with a straight line on here. And if you don't pin accurately, or if you don't pin at all, you might get a wavy line. So you can either pin, or you can use glue. And this right here is Precision Acorn glue. And you can do either one. And you're gonna sew directly on that line, and I'm using Aurifil color 2000. I don't want my thread color to show up. Now from here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to trim a 1/4 inch away from this line. I just put the 1/4 inch line on my Creative Grids ruler right on that drawn line, and I'm going to cut a 1/4 inch away. I do try to be accurate here. If you cut too far, you will have bulk. If you cut too small, it just gets a little risky with your block. And from here, we're gonna press, and again, we are making 4 of these. Now what we're gonna do is set our seam by just putting the iron right on it. I'm gonna press each to one side, and then I'm going to press open. When you look at this block, there are a lot of seams. So I prefer to just press open to make it easier. Now what I'm gonna do right here is once I press open and it's nice and hot, I'm going to put a clapper on one side. This is wood, and it's gonna make that seam lie nice and flat. And you're gonna do this on all 4 blocks. And I will just let that sit there while I'm doing my next step. Now we're gonna make flying geese, and flying geese are really easy. It's a basic quilting technique. You're gonna use 2 fabric K squares and a fabric I rectangle. And what we're gonna do is put 1 K square on the left side. And you're going to have bottom left with a point and then center point in the top center. And you're going to do that same method where you either pin or glue, stitch directly on that line, and it's going to look like this. So what you'll do, again, trim a 1/4 inch away, and I'm going to press. I'm going to set my seam, press to one side, and then I'm going to press open. And I'm gonna let this sit for just about maybe 30 seconds. And then what you'll do is take the other fabric K square, line it up like this, stitch directly on your line. Again, use pins or glue to keep that in place for more accurate results. Trim a 1/4 inch away and do the same thing where you set your seam, press to one side, and anytime you're making a flying geese, you want to make sure right here this is a 1/4 inch. So if your point is not a 1/4 inch away from the top, you will not have an accurate point. And then from there, press open. And then what you'll do is just put the clapper on it. It doesn't matter if it's on the front or the back. You're going to be making 4 flying geese for each block. And with this fabric, we didn't do orange. We did like a medium gray, so it wouldn't overpower the block. So this next part, we're working with star points, and you need the same color fabric. So we have a fabric E and a fabric H, and we put them in the same color, and it's gonna work best if you have the same color. You're gonna sew these with a 1/4 inch seam, and you're gonna make 8 of these. Once you have 8, we're gonna make 1 unit. So we need 2 of each. To make it easy, what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay it out as if we are making the full unit. So you don't want it to be like this, you want it to be like this. So you have 2 fabrics that touch and 2 opposing fabrics. And you're going to take 2 fabric K-squares. Again, I've drawn the line. We're going to be making a point like this. So what you'll do is just stitch directly on those lines, but you want to be careful. Don't cut yet. What you're going to do is do the same thing. You've drawn on the line and you don't want to cut. So what I'm going to do is look at this, and I'm just looking at it as the perspective of this is how that star point should look. So once I have that, I'm going to cut the other side. So this is the correct way. I'll flip this back and cut. And then I'm going to do the same thing over here just to make sure my 2 matching fabrics are here. And I would probably do one of these first. Get used to it before you make all of them. And it looks like this. And then from here, you can either press this one towards the white and this one away from the white, or you can press open. I'm going to press them open. So once I've pressed, like I said, I pressed open, I'm going to, again, put them together, make sure I've got a V of whites and the same prints right here. Now I'm going to show you a tip. When I'm pinning, you want to make sure your fabrics are together. So I've got my white together, my orange together, and I'm going to pin right here. And I accidentally put 2 pins in at one time. You're only supposed to put 1 in. Sew with a 1/4 inch seam and you will get this. Now what we're going to do is take this unit and we're going to take one of the flying geese and put it on top. And so you've got your gray up here, your white here, and if you've pressed everything open, you won't have a lot of bulk here. And you'll do that same thing with pinning, is you'll make sure everything lines up really nice and pin each side. Once it's lined up and pinned, I'm going to also put a pin in the center, stitch with a 1/4 inch seam, and this will be your unit. And you're going to be making 4 of these. Now for the easiest part of the block, we saved that for the very end. You're going to take your fabric F, H, and G fabrics, and you're going to lay them out just like this. And then you're going to sew these 2 with a 1/4 inch seam, press according to the pattern, and then you're going to add those to the top and bottom. And it's going to look just like this. So it's kind of like a fat, chunky plus sign, and that's the center of your block, and you only have to make 1. So now what you're going to do is lay out your pieces starting with your center. And what you should see is the star forming right here. And if you want to have fun, you could rotate these. You would have a totally different block. So you can always kind of change blocks up if you want. And what you're going to want to do is sew with a 1/4 inch seam, press, and then sew your last 2 seams. And what I would say is as you are pinning, you'll want to make sure these points right here line up, and you can achieve that by pinning. You can see all of our points match up, and that is why at the beginning of the video I said it was an intermediate block. Just build your skills and you will eventually be able to build this block. We used the Late October collection by Sweetwater, and I think the oranges really made this block. So if you wanted to do something similar, you could do that with red or blue and just do different shades of a color. I love the wood lily block. I love that it's nice, big, and it's a little bit harder than our other videos, so it's nice and challenging. Now orange isn't my usual color, but you could do this with any color. I would love to see what you make. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you on another video. Bye! I'm Kimberly from Fat Quarter Shop, and on today's Shortcut Quilt, we're going to be making a quilt called Layer Cake Spools. Super easy. It's got a trick to it that you're going to love. I'm using Slow Stroll by Fancy That House Designs for my print layer cake. For my background layer cake, I'm using Bella Solid Snow, and I'm going to use a Aurifil Color 2000, and for notions, the one notion that you do need is a Creative Grids 8.5-inch square ruler, and you'll see why in a little bit. So if you know much about me, you know I love layer cakes and I love starching. This is the brand and the kind that I use. So this pattern is going to work if you starch. If you don't starch, that's totally fine too. But I do want to show you how it looks when you starch. So when you starch, one side of your layer cake is going to shrink about 1/2 inch. So just go ahead, starch all of your pieces if you're interested in starching. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to cut a background and a print layer cake. And you'll see that sometimes your layer cake might be a little bit crooked, and that is going to be perfectly fine in this pattern. What you're going to do is I'm going to just take a 3.5-inch ruler and trim. So now we're going to label them. Your small print is A1, your large print is A2, your small background is B1, and your large background is B2. And what you're going to do is you're going to do that on 32 print squares and 32 background squares. And once you have that cut, we'll move to the next step. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take one print and one background that we just cut, and we're going to put a print on the left side that's small and a background on the right side that's large. We're going to do the reverse here. And when that is done, I'll show you what it looks like. You're going to make 32 and 32. And basically you want to keep the two fabrics together that match for the next step. And it doesn't matter if it is perfectly lined up on the edge, so you don't even have to pin when you put these together if you don't want to, because we're going to be trimming down, and on all of these we're going to press towards your print and away from the background. So now we're going to be using the 8.5-inch square ruler, and doing this is going to give you these perfect blocks, and you're going to love this once you try it. And what we're going to be doing is, this is an 8.5-inch ruler. There's a 3-inch line. I'm going to turn the ruler upside down, put the 3-inch line right on that seam. And this is why you don't need to use pins on the previous step. And then we're going to trim this down, and it does need to be perfectly 8.5 inches square, which is why we're using the ruler. So the precision part of this block starts now. So you're going to make 32 with the print on the left, and then you're going to make 32 with the background on the left, doing the same exact thing, that 3-inch line on this seam. And again, on this step, you want to keep these two together. Now on this step, I'm going to leave the pattern right here. It is so important to follow this. I tried when I was making this to memorize this step, and I just could not. So I'm going to follow the picture. The bottom piece is going to have the big background on the left, the small print on the right, and your matching piece, it has to be matching, you're going to do the opposite. And this is how it looks when you put it together. And I'm going to pin a couple of times on the sides where I'm not going to be drawing lines, just to keep it in place. And again, I'm following this, and I'm going to draw a line from corner to corner in the center. From there, I'm going to draw a line a 1/4 inch away, rotate, do the same thing on the other side. And then here you're going to go to your sewing machine and you're going to stitch on the 2 outside lines right here. And we have done that, and it looks just like this. So there's my stitch lines. Now we're going to cut on the center line. And this is going to give you one unit that looks like this, and it's going to give you one unit that looks like this. You're going to press according to the pattern, and then we're going to assemble the block. So once you iron, you're going to have little dog ears here, and I just cut those off to get those out of the way so that when you put your block together, they don't interfere with your seam. And then we're going to make 32 of these, 32 of these. So once you've made all of your units, you're going to place them together, and you'll have 2 that are more background dominant, opposing, 2 that are more print dominant, opposing, and it's going to create this awesome spool, and you would not have gotten that without all of that crazy math we just did for you. So from here, you're going to put these together, and you're going to pin in this intersection here and here. All of your seams will oppose, so they'll nest really nicely. You'll stitch down this seam, press according to the pattern, and then do the same thing on the last seam. And I'm going to show you how beautiful this block looks. It's amazing, totally original. So with this block and our free pattern, we have size options for lap, twin, queen, and king. So that's how you make the layer cake spools. If you want to see more layer cake videos like this, check out our Shortcut Quilts playlist. And I'd love for you to like this video, comment, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. I'm Kimberly from Fat Quarter Shop, and on today's classic and vintage episode, we're going to learn a block called the Turnabout, and it's super easy. Now, if you love learning about quilts, make sure to subscribe to my channel and join me every Friday for my live streams. So today we're going to be looking at this pattern. In 1930, it was published and called the Turnabout T. And when it was published, you used templates. So that was way before rulers and rotary cutters. But today, what I'm going to focus on is showing you some tips. I'm going to show you tips on corner squares, and I'm going to show you a tip on hourglass blocks and how to trim them down so they come out accurately, and give you points so that your block can come out nice and precise. So let's get started. So your first step is to go to fatquartershop.com and download the free Turnabout block pattern, and that's going to give you the block instructions for free. And you're going to cut your fabric A and your fabric C the same, and these two are going to be used for your hourglass. Your fabric B is going to be used for your corner squares, and your fabric D is going to be your center. So super easy. Go ahead, get all of that cut. We'll get started. And for one block, a fat quarter of a light and a fat quarter of a dark would work. So your first step is to do corner squares. So you're going to take a fabric B square, which is your light square, a fabric D square, which is your dark square. On the wrong side of your dark square, you're going to draw a line from corner to corner using a friction pin. The heat of the iron will make the line disappear. And you're going to pick the top right corner and place your square on top. And here, I do think it's very important to pin. It's kind of big, so if you pin 3 times, that will really help it stay in place. And right here, it's not exactly pinned correctly because I can see that white. You don't want to see the lower piece. So I'm going to fix that. And then you're going to stitch directly on that line. And when you stitch on that line, I'm using color 2024 today, and you're going to trim 1/4 inch away. And your first tip is if you sew a 1/4 inch seam here and press, you will have extra half square triangles you can save for another project. So you can do that throughout this entire project. From here, what you'll do is press according to your arrow. And for now, I'm just going to use the seam presser, and I'll iron it after to get it more accurate. Then you're going to take another fabric D square and do the same thing. Pin, stitch, have your piece, and then here you're going to also press to the outside. You're going to make 4 of these for each block. So now we're going to move to hourglass blocks. Those are your fabric A and fabric C squares. And we always give instructions larger so we can trim down. So you're going to take both of these squares, cut on the diagonal one way, cut on the diagonal a second way. And then from here, we're going to make one hourglass unit to show you. You're going to make a total of 4, but this is how you make one. You will lay it out according to your pattern. So you just want backgrounds opposing and your dark opposing. What you'll do there is sew with a 1/4 inch seam. And I would definitely pin. Sew with a 1/4 inch seam, and then it's going to look like this. And then you'll put these two together, pin in the very center. That's very, very important to get that pin right in the center. And then on the outside, it doesn't have to be pinned exactly because we're going to be trimming down. But these are all bias edges, meaning if you don't pin, it will stretch a little bit more than normal. So you're going to sew a 1/4 inch seam on that. Then when you press, it's going to look like this. And the main thing is you want it to be nice and straight. You want this point to be in the middle, and you just want to make sure that it's not too like all over the place. Then we're going to get a rotating mat. And like I said, anytime I make hourglass blocks, I always cut my squares bigger. And then here we need it to be 5.5, so we're going to trim it. So I've got a Creative Grids 5.5 inch ruler, and in the center of that ruler is a white circle. So I'm going to put that white circle there. I have my diagonal line going there, and these two corners, you want them to be touching the edge of the ruler. So you're going to trim 2 sides. And if you're ever making hourglass blocks at home and you need to know what size to cut them bigger, we have a free chart available at Fat Quarter Shop to get you going on that. Now from here, you're going to make 4 of these, and those are all the units you need for your turnabout block. Now we're moving to the hardest part of the block, and it's assembling it. So each of your pieces were very easy, but now it's going to get harder. What you want to do is put your light square in the center and pay attention to where the lights are in your hourglass blocks and where your lights are in your corner units. Now from here, the way that you can get this block to be really nice is putting your fabrics together and pinning right here and sewing all the way down. Now, if you want to challenge yourself a little bit more, you could, if you're more of an advanced quilter, you could press all of these seams open instead of to one side, and that would get it a little bit more precise. Once you sew all of those together using a 1/4 inch seam, this is how your block looks. And since we pinned, we have really nice intersections. You don't have to worry about anything touching except these 4 intersections, which makes it really nice. And since we trimmed this, you have perfect 1/4 inch points right there. So now our block is done, and now you can see how it looks in our setting. This is the block. Now this is a free block pattern, but we have a low price pattern to show you how to put it into a quilt. And when we did that, we used stars as our sashing, which really makes this star stand out. And we used kind of a medium here and a light here and a dark here. So this quilt is all about fabric placement to get everything to pop. I did want to let you know we used a red thread so that your thread would blend in here. You could also use a white thread, but your thread would blend in here and not blend in here. So you can kind of decide how you want to quilt it, but all of this can be found at Fat Quarter Shop, and this fabric collection is Red and White Gatherings by Primitive Gatherings. Thanks so much for watching the Turnabout block. I hope you try it at home and subscribe to our channel, and I'll see you next time. I'm Kimberly from Fat Quarter Shop, and today we have a shortcut quilt called Layer Cake Tumble. It's the easiest quilt I've ever shown on this channel, so you might just love it, and it's a great gift to give. So when you look at your free pattern that you can download at Fat Quarter Shop, there are 4 size options. For the size we're going to do today, we're going to use 1 layer cake and 1 junior jelly roll. And if you don't want to use a junior jelly roll, you can just cut 18 2.5-inch strips, and let's get started. So today I'm working with the Picnic Pop collection by Me and My Sister Designs, and it works well because it's really nice bright prints. And I have starched all of my fabrics because it can shrink. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut them into 9-inch squares, and I'm going to show you a little trick. What I think is easiest is when you're looking after you starch, one side will be about 9.5 and one side will stay 10 inches. That's just how it works when the layer cake shrinks. Now we want our square to be 9 inches. So I just place a Creative Grids 12-inch ruler on here and make sure that I can get that 9-inch cut. And I'm gonna cut 2 sides. And there's gonna be very little waste on this, and this would be great for I Spy quilts or baby quilts if you wanted to do some really big, bright, fun prints. So super easy, and I think using a square ruler like this will be great, and we're going to also use this in a little bit. But what I wanted to show you is then you take your junior jelly roll and you're going to cut for each square a 2.5-inch by 9-inch rectangle and a 2.5 by 11-inch rectangle. Super easy. So and we did starch this also. And the reason we starched it is it's going to shrink lengthwise, not widthwise. So from here, what you're going to do is put right sides together. And when you stitch this time, use a scant 1/4-inch seam. So don't do a full 1/4-inch seam, just do a little tiny bit less. And then you're going to press and add this. So from here, when I put my 1/4-inch foot on here, that is exactly a 1/4-inch, but I want to do a scant. So I'm going to go slightly to the right, and I'm going to sew this seam. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my seam press roller to just press that seam and add the next rectangle and also use a scant 1/4-inch. And you'll see why that works better in a little bit. So you can see when I added this final strip, it's a little bit short because we use that scant 1/4-inch. So you can make this a little bit longer if you want, but we want this to be 11 inches square. So what I'm going to do is just place my ruler 11 inches this way, 11 inches this way, and just trim off a tiny bit, and that is going to just give us the accuracy that we want. Now you don't have to do that. You can just do a normal 1/4-inch seam, and if you do a normal 1/4-inch seam, you don't have to trim anything down. So what you're going to do is you're going to make 36 of these blocks. So on this quilt, it's super easy. When you lay out your blocks, you're going to lay out 6 across and 6 down, and then you just take your blocks and you're going to rotate them. So one will be this way, one will go this way, and you're just rotating them. And a great thing to do with this quilt is to lay it out before you sew it all together so that you can make sure you have no fabrics touching and no colors touching. And again, this is a great, great gift for somebody. At Fat Quarter Shop, we have a ton of shortcut quilts for you. They're all free videos, so make sure to subscribe to our channel, and I can't wait to see your layer cake tumble quilts. I'm Kimberly from Fat Quarter Shop, and today I'm going to teach you the Shaded Trail quilt block. It was first published in 1935 in the Kansas City Star newspaper, and it was made with templates. So what we've done today is we've made it modernized, where we are going to just use our rotary cutter. Very easy. You're going to need 2 contrasting fabrics, 1 background, and the pattern is fat quarter friendly. The free block pattern is available at fatquartershop.com. If you want to turn the block into a crib, lap, twin, or queen, we do have a low-priced PDF for the setting. So let's get started. For this quilt, we picked the Snow Kissed collection by Sweetwater for Moda. We picked it because it has a lot of variety of colors, which is going to look really nice in your final quilt. Download the free block pattern. Pick your 2 fabrics for your first block, and from one fabric you'll cut a fabric A and a fabric B. From the other color you will cut C and D, and for your background you'll cut E and F. Now on this quilt, if you use a background that is truly a background with nothing else in it, your stars are going to really pop out a little bit more. And I am using color 2000 from Aurifil today. So cut all your fabrics and we'll get started piecing. So we're going to start with half square triangles. We're going to take a fabric A and a fabric C square, put them right sides together, and what I'm going to be showing you today is how to make half square triangles and trim them down. And if you want to use triangle paper, you would use 4-inch finish, which is H400, if you wanted to use triangle paper instead. So what I'm going to do is draw a line in the very center from corner to corner. After I draw that first line, I'm going to draw a line 1/4 inch away on both sides. So now you have 3 lines. What you're going to do is go to your sewing machine, use whatever your normal stitch length is, and stitch on the 2 outside lines. And again, I'm using Aurifil 2000. So this is how it looks stitched. On this pattern, we found that pressing open works the best because there are so many seams. And on this one, our finished half square triangle will be 4 inches, but our unfinished will be 4.5. We made our half square triangles larger so you can trim down, and that's going to give you more accuracy in your block. So what I have here is a 4.5-inch ruler by Creative Grids. You see there's a diagonal line. I'm going to put the diagonal line right on that seam and trim 2 sides first. Turn that around and trim the other 2 sides. And making half square triangles slightly larger will give you more accuracy when you're making your blocks, or instead, if you wanted to not have to trim down, you can use triangles on a roll paper. And again, you're going to make 4 of these. So now for each of the half square triangles, we're going to take 2 fabric F squares, draw a line from corner to corner on the wrong side, and I'm using a friction pen because it's going to disappear with heat later. Now you want to make sure you put it on the corners that don't have a seam. So if you put it this direction, that's incorrect. You want to put it where there's no seam. And what I'll do here is pin, keep it in place. So you're going to stitch this time directly on your drawn lines, and it's going to look like this. And it is important to sew directly to the edge. If you sew a little bit too much to one side, it will not come out exactly 90 degrees on the outside. Trim 1/4 inch away from the edge, and then you're going to press open. And it's going to look like this, and you will see in a little bit why we're pressing open, and you will make 4 of these center units. Now we're going to move to our red side units. You're going to take a fabric B rectangle, a fabric F square, and you're going to draw a line from corner to corner. And on this step, you really want to pay attention to your pattern because it does matter where you lay your piece. You're going to pin that in place. stitch on that drawn line, and it's going to be pressed open again, and you're going to add another fabric F to the bottom. Pay attention to the drawn line, stitch directly on it, and you're going to be trimming 1/4 inch away on both of these, and you're going to make 4 units that look like this. And I'm going to show those to you, and it does make a difference to make sure they're all going the same direction. And then you're going to move to your next step. You're going to use the same exact technique, except they're going to go a different direction, so just follow these carefully. You're going to make 4 red and 4 green, and then we'll start assembling the block. Now our second to last step is to make units. You're going to make sure your red goes this direction, your green is this direction, and this unit is this direction. The key to this is when you are pinning together is that you pin right at the intersections where you've pressed open before. Pin those before you pin the rest. And then you're going to stitch with 1/4 inch seam, press open, and then stitch again with 1/4 inch seam and press open. So once you sew that together, you're going to have a unit that looks like this, and you're going to make 4 of those. Then you're going to pull all 4 of those together, and what you'll be doing there is you want your squares in the corners. So here we have squares in the corners. Again, pin, and you're going to pin at every intersection that has a seam, stitch 1/4 inch seam, press open, and then your last seam. And this is your beautiful block right here. And you can always reference to the very beginning image and just make sure all of your colors are in the right spot. And like I said in the beginning, this is a very busy block, so having a background that is very much a background with nothing else in it is going to give you the best results on this block. And you have 4 beautiful squares on point. And this is how your shaded trail block looks. And if you put one block next to another block, you will see that is why we have pressed open. And this quilt, Shaded Trail, is another addition to our Classic and Vintage series. Let us know if there's any classic block you want us to cover in this. Subscribe and give us a thumbs up, and I'll see you next time.